Hey everyone, Julian here. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make deep minimal tech house, sort of like that Resonance Records style, very deep and sort of jazz influenced and deep house influenced, but also, with a nice, powerful tech house beat underneath it with lots of percussion. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp for just $5, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we have in the project here are these 3 short stabs, which sound like this. So as you can hear, these are all just like these simple deep house type of chords. And I just have 3 of them here, and they sound kind of random when you hear them on their own, but if you listen, they're all kind of like talking to each other and playing a groove together. It's about how they all come together to create the groove. And so the way that you make these is, you can see, they're all just playing G minor chords. It's just different voicings of the G minor chord. Like you can see here, we have G minor, and then we have a C up top. Or excuse me, yeah, we have a C up top. And then here, like, we have this, it's a G minor, but the G is put down an octave. It's all just different voicings of a basic G minor chord. And then you can see, I kind of just programmed this here, like, in little chunks. Like, you make a few little clips, like, this one has the G minor chord, but it's doing a 16th note. Here, it's right on the beat. And then you can just take those and just copy and paste them around and kind of create your groove. You can see how it comes together when you start doing it that way. So that's the way that we did that. And then the sounds on these are all pretty simple. You can see, like, this first one here is just some FM with some sine waves. And then we have a bit of chorus and echo and reverb to give it some space. And I also actually have, you can see the reverb on this one is being automated. So that's kind of an interesting thing, is we get those like... like that little... You can really hear it over here. And this compressor here actually helps to bring that out. You can see I have the attack up so it doesn't mess up the punch of the chord, but it brings the reverb out. And then we just have some saturation. You can see this one's actually made with wavetables, so it's just a square wave with a filter that's got an envelope on it. We have a little bit of a phaser on that, as well as some chorus and echo and reverb for space, and then some saturation. And the last one is just actually a square wave going into a bandpass filter. Yeah, really simple sound. This is meant to be more almost like an organ chord. You can hear that in there. And then that's just got some really fast Debbie echo and a drum bus. And yeah, so those are those short stabs. Those are sort of like the main, like, deep house stabs that we have going on here. But then we also have these filter stabs down here, which you can hear just come every 4 bars. So these are actually playing the same MIDI. So this is also just based on a G minor chord. Like if you look at this, you can see we have G minor, and then we have some D minors in here as well. That would be, just the 5th, of course, of G minor, and then spread out into a chord, and then like a high G minor there. So we're just creating this like little quote unquote chord melody. It's an interesting way of doing it. And it's the same MIDI on the second one down here, and these are also both being made in a pretty similar way. So essentially, you can see this first one here, what's happening is it's all about actually the LFO and the filter. So we just have a saw wave with a bit of FM from some sine waves to create a different waveform, and those are going into a low pass filter. But then you can see I have this sample and hold LFO here, and that's on the filter cutoff. So what sample and hold means is it basically just means it's a random LFO. So what you do is you set this to like a certain time, and it's just moving the filter all over the place. And that's really what creates the sound, is the combination of that movement and then the chords jumping all around in the MIDI. It's a perfect intersection of the MIDI and the actual synth sound coming together to create something interesting in the track. So it's all about that movement. You can do this by hand, but doing it with an LFO creates some interesting stuff, I think, that you wouldn't normally think to do. And then that's just going through some echo. We have it on the dotted eighth note setting, and then we just have a bit of drum bus. And then the second one is actually very similar. We can see with this one, so we have a square wave. And then that's just going into a bandpass filter. So this one's a bit more juicy, because it's like that super harmonically rich square wave, and the bandpass filter is a little bit more juicy sounding. You can see it's the same LFO and echo and drum bus. And yeah, these are just like a nice thing to put at the end of every 4 bars. You know, it creates some nice, like, interesting stuff in the track. That kind of breaks it up and makes it feel exciting. Then we have these vocals. So yeah, these are just these 2 vocal samples. The main thing to keep in mind with these is the way that they're fitting into the beat rhythmically. If you notice, they always happen on an upbeat, like there and there. So you don't just have it like, yeah, that's boring if it's right on the 1, but it's a lot more interesting if you go, you know, it's like, boom, because it's on that upbeat. And then same deal over here. And that's also just a case of, like, this has a lot of 8th notes going on here. So that just fits really well to just have it da, 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 while the beat's like doom, doom, doom underneath it. And then over here, all I've done is I've just reversed them. So I just start, you can hear that, and then, you know, it just kind of breaks it up a little bit. It's an easy thing to do too, because obviously, since these vocals are a little bit more like background, you know, just reversing them, you're not really going to notice that it's the same thing reversed. It's just kind of like another energy booster for the track to have it. As you can hear, and then you can see we just have a bit of echo. This one, I have it unsynced, so it's kind of a bit more dubby and raw sounding, and then we just have some drum bus, which fattens that up a bit. And then we have this little effect sound. So it's just this little thing that hits at the start of every 2 bars. You see we have like a long one, and then just a little short one like that. So that's just in there. You know, again, it's a little energy booster. It's like, if you listen to this with the vocals, you know, that on its own has a lot of energy. So then when we put those layers over top of the track, it's just that last little thing that you need that seems like background, but it actually makes a big difference. Because without this, it would just be a little bit flat, not having like that and the vocal. And you can see this is just going through some echo. This one's also unsynced. A bit of drum bus, which makes it a bit fatter. A high pass filter. And then finally, we just have a compressor, which is sidechaining this one to the kick. And yeah, then we have the kick and the bass. So the bass sounds like this. So again, we're in the key of G minor, so it's all just pretty straightforward notes from that. Like you can see, these 3 notes, which are the main 3 that you hear throughout the track, are just actually a G minor basic triad. You can see we have G, the root note, A sharp, the minor 3rd, and then D, the 5th. But then we also have some extra notes in there, like we have this F, which is the minor 7th. We have another F up there, another G up there, and this part at the end of every 4 bars, that little, you can hear that resolves it really nicely. I like adding something like that in. I think that's what is something that really like separates this style from other styles of like quote unquote like minimal house or minimal tech houses. The bass line's very repetitive, but there's room to do stuff like that where you can still do like that nice resolving at the end of the pattern. You don't have to just do the same 1-bar loop over and over. It makes it a lot more exciting. And then the sound for this one is very simple. It's just a square wave going into a low pass filter with a bit of resonance. The resonance really makes the bass fatter. If I turn that down, You hear what I mean. When I turn it back up, you can see immediately. And then we have the amp envelope like that. We just have a bit of drum bus. And some EQ as well, just cutting out a little bit of space for the kick and boosting the low end. And then finally, I just have this being sidechained to the kick. And the kick sounds like this. And it's being made with 2 layers, so essentially we have like our main. You can hear this is just this nice hard-hitting kick. But then we have this one on top. Just to add a little bit more click to it and like some punch, because when I was referencing this with some other tracks, I noticed that if you don't have that right amount of click in the kick, like if I turn this layer off, it can kind of get buried. And then we add that like click to it, it just gives it a little bit more punch, and the groove works a little bit better. And then we just have some drum bus on that. And then we have the groove of the kick and bass, which you can see just has a little bit of saturation. So here's without it. And then with it, just kind of gluing everything together a little. And that is the kick and bass. Then we have this group, which is called Click Clack, which sounds like this. So as you can hear, these are all the sort of like background percussions, and when you play these on their own, it can seem a bit odd, but if I play them with the hi-hats, you'll hear. So yeah, you can hear these are just a bunch of these little quickie percussions. The main thing to keep in mind here is just like how much it's happening. Again, like I talk about this in a lot of these videos, but it's really easy to overlook how much percussion you actually want to have in a track like this, because when you hear a track in this style, a lot of times you don't really notice. It can be hard at least to notice like exactly how many things are going on. So it's important to really make sure that you have just like at least 3 or 4 things like this. Even 5 can work really well, or 6. But like just make sure that you have those things, and then you have to make sure that they're kind of like working together too. Like, you know, for example, how you can see we have, it's kind of creating its own groove when you hear it, and that's what you want. You know, it's not enough to just put in notes. You need to make sure that the notes are still like working with each other, just like we did with those short stabs up top. And then on the group of these, we just have a fast echo and a bit of drum bus, so just fattening them up and then adding a little bit of space to them. And then we have the hi-hats. So you can see it's just 3 layers, so we just have our main one. Just this fat open hi-hat that has a lot of punch to it. You can see it's got a really sharp transient. Then we have this one, which is just adding those extra little hits like that. And then we have our shaker. Just like a live shaker like this. Goes really well actually underneath these. And that's being sidechained to the kick. And then on the group of hi-hats, I've just got a very short reverb. So there's without it. And with it, you can hear it just adds a little tiny bit of space that works really well with this. And then we have the saturator. So here's without this. And with it, I've changed the color mode to this medium curve, which actually goes a long way for fattening sounds up. I really recommend you try that on your hi-hats, because it doesn't make them too crunchy. You can see I don't even need like a low end cut at the end of this. But yeah, there's the hi-hats. And then the last thing that we have down here is the snare and clap. So you can see, yeah, we just have our main clap. You know, it's a very mid-rangey, punchy clap like this. You don't want it to be too like open sounding. Like you want it to be just like I said, like this mid-rangey like. And so that is in there, and then underneath that we have the 2 snares. So these are just like pretty standard deep house. Kind of sounds, you know, very swingy. And then those are just in there, and again those are playing off of each other as well. And then I have these all going into just a bit of drum bus. So I like to put the claps and the snares together. You know, they're kind of similar elements, so it works well to just have a group that's just claps and snares. Here's without this. And then with it, so you can hear It really makes these sound full and kind of like puts them in a more even place in the mix. And yeah, so that is going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.